This is the story of Altis in 1974. The communist takeover, the resulting naval battles between NATO and Warsaw Pact forces, and its eventual recapture by the British. The islands that would become the Republic of Altis and Stratis have known in conflict from the early 20th century until modern times. Historians of Altis and Stratis tend to focus on events on land, but locals know they live on islands. They are surrounded and their lives are dominated by thalassa, the sea. And they know that control of the islands inevitably falls to those who exercise thalassocratia, sea power. In this episode, Gastovski must continue his maritime reconnaissance of the waters around Altis, alone. It is now June 1974, and NATO forces remain heavily committed in the Eastern Mediterranean. But the Western Bloc, and thus NATO leadership, is in political disarray, creating opportunities for action by the Eastern Bloc, the communist Warsaw Pact countries. In the US, the Watergate scandal continues to dominate political discussions, and is a major distraction to Republican President Richard Nixon. The UK elections in March have seen a change of government following the election victory of the left-wing Labour Party, and a new Prime Minister, Harold Wilson. West Germany's Chancellor Willy Brandt has resigned in the fallout from a spy scandal involving the East Germans. It turns out that Willy Brandt is not even his real name. Greece is ruled by a military junta intent on renegotiating US presence in the country, including US destroyers home porting in Athens, maritime patrol aircraft based out of Suda Bay, communications facilities such as Naval Communications Station Greece, and other undisclosed facilities. Greek tensions with Turkey continue to escalate. The two NATO members are at loggerheads over oil discoveries in the Aegean and control of the eastern Aegean islands close to the Turkish coast. Relations between both communities are in serious decline on the island of Cyprus, near the British airbase at RAF Akrotiri. Meanwhile, the attention of the American Sixth Fleet remains firmly focused to the south, on Operation Nimbus, a mine clearance operation in the Suez Canal, and monitoring the Soviet fleet build-up at Tartus. James Gastovski, CEO of Pegasus Air Taxi, is still contracting to NATO. Under cover of his air courier service and regular flights between Athens and Istanbul, he is conducting covert maritime surveillance of the waters around Altis. His mission is to detect any evidence of Soviet maritime support to communist insurgents. Having provided extensive military supplies to Syria in the recent war, the Soviets have negotiated long-term access to the naval base at Tartus. Syrian agreement to Soviet access was essential to Soviet support for the ceasefire between Syria and Israel, not signed until May 1974, more than 4 months after Egypt. The Soviets continue to build up their naval forces at and around Tartus. These forces, the 5th Operational Squadron, are the Soviet counter to the US 6th Fleet in the Eastern Mediterranean. A significant proportion of the 5th Operational Squadron, as many as 1/5 of the vessels, are Soviet submarines. Occasionally, they make their presence known on the surface. Submerged, these submarines are the most dangerous threat to the American carriers. The surface ships of the 5th Operational Squadron are mostly configured for anti-submarine warfare. Moskva is a helicopter carrier, not an aircraft carrier. Air cover is provided by land-based aircraft operating out of the Syrian airbase at Tuftanaz. Including maritime patrol aircraft. Hunting American submarines. And keeping a close eye on the American 6th Fleet. Yet the Soviets know that a single base in the Mediterranean leaves them vulnerable. NATO can still block the movement of their ships and fleets into the Mediterranean, through the Dardanelles to the north, the Suez Canal to the south, and the Strait of Gibraltar and Strait of Sicily to the west. Another naval base would allow them to keep more ships in the Mediterranean and project even more sea power. This was the genesis of Operation Meerkat, the Soviet effort to covertly supply arms and advisors to communist insurgents on Altis and Stratis, and thus set the conditions for a communist takeover of the islands, with the intention of establishing a Soviet naval base at Pyrgos, close to the mouth of the Dardanelles Straits. It is late in the afternoon on 19 June 1974 as James Gastovski takes off from Istanbul Airport. A delay in refueling means he is later than his usual schedule. His usual fuel supplier ran out of 100 LL grade aviation fuel, known as Blue. Instead, Gastovski had to make arrangements to refuel with 100-130 grade aviation fuel, known as Green. The airport is busy and he is lucky to get a takeoff slot ahead of a heavy regular passenger transport, operated by Pangaea Airlines. He wastes no time taxiing to the end of the runway, going through the Cessna's pre-flight checklist as he goes. Doors and windows closed and locked. Flight controls free and correct. Flight instruments set. Fuel selector valves. Mixture rich. Elevator trim set. Throttle check. Radios set. Autopilot off. Flaps set. brakes release, carburetor cold, throttle full open. He is likely to cross Altis at dusk and arrive in Athens after dark. Overwater navigation is still new to him, and he had briefly considered staying overnight. But a commercial client has paid him good money for overnight delivery, so he takes the risk. It is after 8 PM local time as Gastovski approaches Altis. But it is summertime and the sun sets late at this time of year. The setting sun, off to starboard, casts long shadows over the island. Down on the ground, the heat of day is beginning to dissipate and a warm night is about to begin. After some weeks on this route, the landmarks are becoming familiar. In such circumstances, it is easy to mentally switch off. Focused on navigating in the early evening gloom, he almost misses it. A dark shape silhouetted against the seashore. At the small port of Triada on the north coast. He prepares the hidden camera. A container ship. Curious. Most commercial vessels go to Kavala or Piogos. This ship is alongside the tiny port of Triada and using its onboard cranes to unload containers from the deck. The flag confirms the vessel as Soviet. But no longer lurking in a bay, surreptitiously unloading people and stores into small boats. For the Soviets to be this brazen, the communist insurgents must now have effective control of the port and surrounding roads and countryside. Mere kilometres from Altis International Airport. Where are the Royal Altis Military Police? Or Her Majesty's Customs for that matter? What must this mean for British control of the island? And Gastovski wonders, what is in the containers? Off to starboard, the hills and woods of Western Altis, home to the communist insurgency. But how much of the island is now under their control? As the sun sets over Greece and Thessaloniki to the west, Gastovski sets course for Kavala, from there to Stratis and Athens. His mind racing, mentally preparing his next report. On his return to Athens, Gastovski had carefully compiled his report and developed the negatives. The usual courier picked them up the next day and took them to the US Embassy in Athens. From there, they found their way to a certain desk officer at Northwood. A few days later, Gastovski was returning to Alenikon Airport from a test flight in a small single-engine Cessna 172 Skyhawk he was thinking of buying for his courier business. There, waiting for him in the hangar, was a US Air Force guy, his DIA contact, who worked undercover at Air Transport Command, who this time brought a colleague. Gastovski recognized him as a company guy from the US Embassy in Athens. Greetings, gentlemen.
Thanks for the reports, James, and great photos. DCI sends his regards. You could even read the name of the ship in the last one. Now, the photo interpretation guys took their rulers out and measured the size of the wooden crates on the wharf using the known mass height of the freighter. They reckoned the crates were too large for rifles and such, but just the right size for vehicles, jeeps, or trucks perhaps. We need to know what was in the crates, James.
The Brits have figured whatever was in them was moved into the mountains in the northwest of the island. But their guy can't go anywhere near there, nor can the Royal Altis military police. It is just too dangerous these days, and a military operation would attract too much attention. So, we need your eyes in the sky. Make sure you take your time over northwest Altis on the next few runs. And keep your eyes peeled, James.
Two handlers from separate agencies, thought Gastovski. Must be important if the company is muscling in. 2 days later, on his way back from Istanbul, Gastovski approaches Altis. Keep my eyes peeled, he mutters quietly. What do they think I've been doing all this time? He turns into the coast from Amalfi Bay. And flies low and slow over northwest Altis. As instructed. Eyes scanning the ground for anything interesting. Empty roads. Stands of trees. Open fields. The occasional stone house. There. A truck. He readies the camera. Perhaps this was what they were looking for. Trucks for moving around rebels and equipment. Suddenly, his reverie is interrupted by flashes of light in the corner of his eye. Tracer rounds.
Roger, go down, roger, bust, roger, turn, 154, roger, go to altitude, roger, turn, 17, roger, turn, 22, roger, go to altitude, 20, roger, turn, 176.
He pushes the throttle all the way forward.
Roger, turn, 17, roger, roger, turn, roger.
and makes rapid changes in course and altitude. Look, to starboard.
Roger, turn 23. Roger, roger, turn 240. Roger, roger, turn 217. Roger, go to altitude 300. Roger, turn 161.
His heart is pounding with a sudden dump of adrenaline. He instantly recognizes AAA fire.
Roger, turn 230. Roger, turn 244. Roger, go to altitude 1000.
23mm fire. He saw enough of it in Vietnam to recognize it instantly.
On station. Roger, turn 211. Roger, turn 196.
Just short of Kavala, he turns south for Stratis. He exchanges looks with his co-pilot, whose eyes are wide with fear. No photos in all the excitement. They will just have to believe me, he thinks. Since when did the communist insurgents have 23mm anti-aircraft artillery? Was this what was in the containers? And why did they open up on him? The AAA must be protecting something that he cannot be allowed to see. Whatever the insurgents are hiding, it must be important. At least important enough to reveal their AAA. Gastovski suddenly realizes what he saw to starboard out of the corner of his eye. 4 artillery pieces in an open field. Soviet, 76mm from the quick glimpse he got. Effective against air and surface targets. The AAA is protecting artillery. The communist insurgents don't only have 23mm AAA. They also have artillery. His mind races as his plane races across the water to Stratis. Not even the 1st Altis Brigade have artillery. Artillery will give the communist forces a decisive advantage over both the Royal Altis Military Police and the conventional military forces on Altis. And that changes everything. In the next episode, security forces on Altis investigate reports of communist artillery. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. And stay tuned for the next episode.